It was a cold, moonless night in the winter of 1996, and I was driving alone on a desolate stretch of highway in rural Pennsylvania. The kind of road where the trees loom like skeletal hands, clawing at the sky, and the only light comes from your own headlights cutting through the endless darkness. I was on my way back from visiting a friend, and the GPS on my phone had long since lost signal. I was relying on memory and the occasional road sign to guide me home. That's when I saw it. At first, it was just a flicker of movement in the corner of my eye, a shadow darting across the road. I slammed on the brakes, my tires screeching against the asphalt. My heart pounded as I scanned the road ahead, but there was nothing there, just the empty highway stretching into the void. I told myself it was probably a deer or some other animal, but deep down, I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold. I kept driving, trying to shake the unease that had settled over me. The road seemed to stretch on forever, and the trees pressed closer, their branches forming a tunnel that felt almost suffocating. That's when I noticed the car behind me. It was an old, rusted sedan, its headlights dim and flickering. It had appeared out of nowhere, and it was tailing me closely, too closely. I sped up, hoping to put some distance between us, but the car matched my speed exactly. My hands tightened on the steering wheel as I glanced in the rearview mirror. The driver's face was obscured by shadows, but I could feel their eyes on me. I turned onto a side road, hoping to lose them, but the sedan followed without hesitation. My heart raced as I took another turn, then another, but no matter what I did, the car stayed right behind me. Panic began to set in. I was miles from the nearest town, and my phone was still useless. I was completely alone. That's when the sedan's headlights suddenly went out. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. The road was pitch black now, the only light coming from my own car. I slowed down, my eyes darting to the rearview mirror, but the sedan was gone. Relief washed over me until I realized something even more terrifying. The road ahead was no longer familiar. The trees were thicker, the air heavier, and the road itself seemed to have changed. It was narrower, rougher, as if it hadn't been maintained in decades. I tried to turn around, but the road behind me was gone, swallowed by the darkness. I had no choice but to keep going. After what felt like hours, I saw a faint light in the distance. As I got closer, I realized it was a house, a small, dilapidated cabin tucked deep in the woods. Desperate for help, I pulled into the driveway and got out of the car. The air was eerily still, and the only sound was the crunch of gravel beneath my feet. I knocked on the door, but there was no answer. The windows were dark, and the place looked abandoned. Just as I was about to leave, the door creaked open on its own. Against my better judgment, I stepped inside. The interior was frozen in time, as if the occupants had vanished mid-meal. A table was set with plates of food, now rotted and covered in mold. The air was thick with the smell of decay. I called out, but my voice echoed hollowly through the empty rooms. That's when I heard it, a faint whisper coming from the basement. It was barely audible, but it sent a shiver down my spine. I told myself to leave, to get back in my car and drive away, but something compelled me to investigate. I found the basement door and slowly descended the stairs, each step creaking under my weight. The basement was dark, the only light coming from a single flickering bulb. The walls were covered in strange symbols, carved deep into the wood, and in the center of the room was a chair, facing away from me. The whispering grew louder, more urgent, but I couldn't make out the words. I stepped closer, my heart pounding in my chest. That's when the chair slowly turned to face me. It was empty. I don't remember how I got out of that house. I don't remember driving away or how I eventually found my way back to the highway. All I know is that when I finally made it home, my car was covered in scratches, as if something had been clawing at it, and in the back seat, I found a single rusted key. To this day, I have no explanation for what happened that night, but sometimes, when I'm alone in the dark, I hear that faint whisper again, and I can't shake the feeling that whatever was in that house is still with me.